Virginia's ruling class just can't seem to avoid trying to trample all over and infringe all of our firearm rights.
The General Assembly is addressing some hot-button issues in this year's legislative session.
A Virginia Senate committee advanced several bills that would tighten gun laws. One bill would create a Class 1 misdemeanor.
Virginia Democrats are moving forward with several bills they say are meant to reduce gun violence in the Commonwealth.
There are dozens and dozens of items of property right now in your possession that overnight will become illegal contraband.
The American people deserve and they have the right to defend themselves, and that's what we're fighting for.
Right now, as you're watching this, a bill sitting in the Virginia Legislature just got rewritten. And the new version doesn't just restrict what you can buy going forward. It targets what's already sitting in your safe, in your range bag, in your nightstand. We're talking about property you legally purchased, possibly years ago, that could become illegal contraband overnight. And the worst part, most Virginia gun owners have no idea this change even happened. Let's break this down, because what's unfolding in the Commonwealth of Virginia right now is one of the most aggressive legislative moves against gun owners we've seen in any state this year. And I'm not being dramatic. When you see exactly what changed in this bill, literally a handful of words added to a single sentence, you'll understand why this matters not just for Virginia, but potentially for every gun owner in America. We're talking about Senate Bill 749. Now, Virginia has a mountain of gun-related legislation moving through its chambers this session. It's honestly hard to keep track of all of it, but this particular bill deserves your full attention because of what just happened to it behind closed doors in committee.
Changes to education and firearms laws are sparking debate across Virginia.
Have no place in our communities. Neither do the extended magazines that contribute to so much misery.
It will drastically change how the landscape will look for Second Amendment rights in Virginia.
It extends to any magazine capable of accepting over 10 rounds, again with a small exception for tubular 22 magazines.
And if you are convicted of it, then you would be barred from owning firearms for at least 3 years post-conviction.
Senate Bill 749 would ban the possession of all of those magazines that you and I both know you're already in possession of.
When Senate Bill 749 was first introduced on January 19th, it was already a sweeping proposal. It came out of the gate as what legislators are calling an assault weapon and large capacity magazine ban. And before anyone gets hung up on terminology, let me be very clear about something. When I say assault weapon, I'm using the exact language from the bill itself. This is important because a lot of people hear that phrase and think we're only talking about AR-15s and AK-47s, semi-automatic rifles, that's it. No, this bill reaches far beyond that. It encompasses certain pistols. It encompasses certain shotguns. The definition is deliberately broad, and that's by design. But here's where things take a sharp turn, and this is the part of the story you really need to pay attention to. The magazine portion of this bill, as originally written, said the following, and I'm paraphrasing the legal language here. Any person who imports, sells, barters, or transfers a large capacity ammunition feeding device would be guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. Now, if that sounds familiar, it should. That's essentially the same framework several other states have used. You ban the commercial sale going forward from a specific date. You don't touch possession. And by not banning possession, you effectively grandfather in every single magazine that's already out there in private hands. That's how Washington State structured its magazine law.
One bill that's already drawing a lot of attention and debate would ban assault weapons, as well as high-capacity magazines.
Committee approving several bills on Monday, including ones to ban the sale of assault weapons, regulate ghost guns, and more.
This proposed law makes it a Class 1 misdemeanor to even possess one of those magazines.
This is only one of numerous firearms bills that lawmakers will be facing.
Your governor could essentially take property from you because it would render this property completely worthless.
Even Maryland allows you to keep magazines over 10 rounds that you already possess.
You can't buy new ones, but the ones you already own, totally legal, you're fine. That's how Senate Bill 749 started. And honestly, while that was already a significant restriction, there was at least a logic to it that gun owners could navigate. You keep what you have, you just can't get more. Then the bill went into the Senate Committee on Courts of Justice, and what came out the other side was fundamentally different. The rewritten version of that same section now reads, any person who imports, sells, barters, transfers, purchases, or possesses a large capacity ammunition feeding device is guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. 2 words, or possesses. That's all they added. 2 words that completely transformed the legal landscape for millions of Virginia gun owners. Under the original version, your existing magazines were safe. Under this new version, every single magazine you currently own that holds more than 10 rounds would become illegal the moment this bill is signed into law. Not just the ones you buy after the effective date, the ones in your closet right now, the ones that came standard with the firearm you purchased 5, 10, 15 years ago. Think about that for a second. Think about your own collection. How many magazines do you own that hold more than 10 rounds? If you own a Glock 17, the standard magazine holds 17 rounds. If you own a SIG P320, you're looking at 17 or 21 rounds, depending on the variant. If you own virtually any modern full-size or compact pistol, the factory magazine almost certainly exceeds 10 rounds. And we haven't even talked about rifle magazines yet. The standard AR-15 magazine holds 30 rounds. That's been the standard for over half a century. Now multiply that across every gun owner in Virginia. We're talking about millions upon millions of legally purchased, legally owned pieces of property that would, with the stroke of a pen, become criminal contraband.
I guarantee you there are judges that possess magazines capable of holding over 10 rounds, and they're not going to be happy about having to get rid of them.
You can't have high-capacity magazines or a firearm that takes a quote-unquote high-capacity magazine.
Today, a Senate committee approving bills affecting assault weapons, safe storage, and more.
Virginia's General Assembly reconvenes this Wednesday, and gun control legislation is once again a hot-button issue.
And here's what makes this even more consequential. Under this version of the bill, your options would be brutally limited. You could destroy your magazines, you could render them permanently inoperable, or you could surrender them. That's it. There is no buyback program written into this legislation. There is no compensation mechanism. The state would essentially be telling you that property you paid good money for is now worthless, and that's your problem to deal with. Which brings us to a constitutional question that could define the next decade of gun litigation in this country. Can a state government actually do this? Can they just declare your lawfully acquired property illegal and offer you nothing in return? The Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution has something very specific to say about this. The relevant language states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. That's the Takings Clause. And if Senate Bill 749 passes in its current form, it would set up one of the most direct confrontations with the Takings Clause that we've seen in the firearms context. Now, this isn't just theoretical. There's already active litigation that Virginia residents should be watching very carefully. Out in California, a case called Duncan v. Bonta has been working its way through the courts, and it deals with remarkably similar issues. The state banning possession of magazines that residents already legally owned. That case is now before the United States Supreme Court, and however the court rules will have massive implications for what Virginia is trying to do here. If the Supreme Court strikes down California's possession ban, Virginia's version would almost certainly face the same fate. But if the court upholds it, that opens the door for every state in the country to follow suit. And beyond the Takings Clause argument, there are the core Second Amendment challenges that would inevitably follow.
So even Maryland is less draconian on this issue than Virginia is setting out to be.
For those of you who think this is only going to ban semi-automatic rifles, oh, no.
Democrats are moving forward with several bills they say are meant to reduce gun violence in the Commonwealth.
Back in 1776, Virginia's Article 1, Section 13 protected your right to arms.
Under the Supreme Court's Bruin framework, any firearms regulation has to be consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation. Courts are going to look at whether these magazines are in common use for lawful purposes, and with tens of millions of them in circulation nationwide, that's a very hard argument for the state to lose. They're also going to examine whether these items are dangerous and unusual, the legal standard that would need to be met to justify a ban. A magazine that comes standard with the most popular handguns and rifles in America is, by definition, not unusual. So Virginia gun owners would have strong legal ground to fight this. But here's the uncomfortable reality that nobody likes to talk about. Legal challenges take years, sometimes many years, and while those challenges work through the courts, the law would be in effect. Which means every day that you possess a magazine holding more than 10 rounds, you'd be committing a Class 1 misdemeanor under Virginia law. And it gets worse. It would be a separate charge for each magazine. If you're like most gun owners I know, you don't have 1 or 2 magazines over the limit. You have dozens, maybe more. each one a separate criminal charge, each one carrying its own potential penalties. For the folks who are already thinking, I just won't comply, and I know there are a lot of you, I understand that impulse, but I want you to go into that decision with your eyes wide open about what the legal consequences would be if you're caught. This isn't a parking ticket. A Class 1 misdemeanor in Virginia can carry up to 12 months in jail and a fine of up to $2,500 per offense, per magazine. Now, this bill still has to pass in its current form. It still has to make it through the full Senate, through the House, and onto the governor's desk. There are still opportunities for this language to be amended or for the bill to fail entirely. But the fact that a committee specifically chose to add possession to the list of prohibited conduct tells you exactly where the momentum is heading. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a drafting error. Someone deliberately inserted those two words because they wanted to go further than the original bill proposed. They wanted to reach into your home and make criminals out of law-abiding citizens who have done absolutely nothing wrong. Virginia, this is your moment to pay attention. This is your moment to contact your representatives. This is your moment to show up, speak out, and make your voice heard before this bill reaches a final vote. Because once it's signed, the fight shifts from the legislature to the courtroom, and that's a fight that takes years and costs millions. Everything about Senate Bill 749, the full text, the committee amendments, all of it, is publicly available, and I'd encourage every single one of you to read it for yourself. Don't take anyone's word for it. Read the actual language, understand exactly what's being proposed, and then decide what you're going to do about it. Because at the end of the day, being a responsible and informed gun owner means more than just knowing how to safely operate your firearm. It means understanding the legal landscape you're operating in, knowing your rights, and being prepared to defend them, not just with words, but with action. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.